Hi friends, we are going to solve the answer key for UPSC 2024 Mains GS Paper 2 International Relations subject. As you may be aware, 4 questions are asked from International Relations under Paper 2. 2 questions are of 150 words, 2 are for 250 words. Before solving the answers, I would like to share with you some basic and important guidelines regarding answer writing. When you answer questions for IR, try to identify the core of the question first. The core of the question will always be related to the topics within the syllabus. The syllabus talks about different topics: India and the neighborhood, India and rest of the world, international organization, Indian diaspora, and so on. So you should identify the topic clearly. Secondly, address the question and write the answer in a holistic manner. Try to touch different dimensions. The important dimensions are geographic, cultural, social, economic, political, and defense. The 3 important dimensions are economic, political, and defense. Ensure that you are touching these dimensions. Thirdly, try to give rich conceptual content. Even though you have to write facts from current affairs, you have to write conceptual points. So this is expected by UPSC. So write conceptually and you bring in general facts and current affairs facts to elucidate the conceptual points. Okay. For example, strategic autonomy is a conceptual point. Soft power is a concept. Hard power is a concept. Extended neighborhood is a concept. Natural partner is a concept. Indo-Pacific region is a concept. Energy diplomacy is a concept, right? So ensure that the conceptual key terms are given in your answer. Okay, we will solve the first question. Let's read the question. The West is fostering India as an alternative to reduce dependence on China's supply chain and as a strategic ally to counter China's political and economic dominance. Explain this statement with examples. So first, decode the question. India is given in the question. West is given in the question. China is also given in the question. So we have to correlate India's relationship with West on one hand and China on the other hand. We have to explain how the West is trying to foster India or support India as an alternative to reduce its dependence on China. Okay. Now we have to structure the answer. We understood the question. We have broken down the question. Now we have to structure the answer. You have to give an introduction. The introduction is nothing but the core of the question, the main part that you are going to address. Okay. So here the introduction is India-West relations. This is the introduction. Then body of the answer. Now you are asked to explain how India is being fostered as an alternative. Okay. So subheading is India as an alternative to counter China. This is the body of the answer that follows the introduction. At the end, you have to write the conclusion. So this is how we structure the answer. Okay. So when we structure the answer correctly using the introduction, body of the answer and conclusion, we can easily bring the content within the answer. Okay. Now what should you write in under India-West relationship in the introduction? I have to briefly explain the essence of India-West relations. Here West refers to political West. During the Cold War, they were known as Western Bloc. The political West is led by the US today. Apart from the US, the important states in political West come mainly from Western Europe. France, UK, Germany, Spain, Italy, and so on. The political West is present in the geographical East also. For example, South Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, they are geographical East, but they are political West. So you have to give the essence of India-West relations briefly. Okay. Now, let us write the answer. Let's give the content. Okay. I have to briefly mention the important points and give the essence of India-West relations. India and West are strategic partners today. Strategic partnership means partnership for the long term. India and West, I am writing in the form of points. So I am giving in the form of hints so that you can write the answer accordingly. You can write in the form of paragraphs in the actual answer. I am sharing the answer key as points. Now there are values which bring India and the West together. The important values are democracy, rule of law, peace, human rights, economic development, and trade. Right? So ensure that you are giving an answer that addresses all the important dimensions. Then the India-West relationship as an important pillar. The important pillar is India-US relationship. Today, US is a strategic partner for India. India-US relationship is actually the cornerstone of India-West relations because US itself is the leader of the West. So this bilateral relationship should be mentioned. This is nothing but the pillar. Okay. Now come to China. Why is the West trying to give India an important position? Okay, you have to write here. Now the West as well as India are facing common threats from China, is it not? Now China is seen as a neo-imperial power. China is using its hegemony across the world. It is trying to bring other states under its economic spheres of influence. Write these points, but write them briefly. Okay. Now continue. One important region is the Indo-Pacific region. Indo-Pacific region, China is a major hegemonistic power, and the specific strategy and the project used by China to bring other countries under its economic spheres of influence is the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI in short. So ensure that you are mentioning these points briefly in the introduction. Now introduction is over. Now body of the question. What is the body? Body of the answer. Body of the answer is how India is used as an alternative. How is West fostering India as an alternative? The West is already dependent on China. For example, Western states like UK are members of AIIB. This bank is dominated by China. Many Western states are under the spheres of influence of BRI. Even US is dependent on China economically to a certain extent. Now, how is India going to replace? Okay. Now, you have to elucidate in the body of the answer. In the body of the answer, first mention that India and the West, we advocate an open, rules-based international economic order. So first write this in the body of the answer. Okay. Along with this, we have to check China's spheres of influence in various regions. Okay. Now, China's spheres of influence is seen through the BRA project. It is also seen through its extensive supply chain throughout the world in various regions such as Africa, Central Asia, West Asia, and so on. Okay. Then you illustrate with examples. The question itself is asking about the example. Explain this statement with examples. So let me give certain examples. Try to give around 3 important examples, enough for the mains examination. IPEC, Indo-Pacific Economic Partnership. IPEC is a partnership of 14 states in Indo-Pacific, led by the US. India is a member in IPEC. Some of the important areas of focus in IPEC are trade, supply chain resilience, and clean economy. Okay. Under IPEC, India is working with the leader of the West, US. Now we are checking China's spheres of influence in the Indo-Pacific region. Next example is the Quad partnership or the Quad alliance. Under Quad alliance, we are trying to improve the trade in the Indo-Pacific, India and the West. Why West here? The Quad has Western countries, Australia, Japan and US. 3 political West countries are here. Naturally, the political countries are economically developed. Under the Quad alliance, we are trying to do alternate debt financing for this region. So this is second example. Third example is a very important example. IMEC corridor. India, Middle East, Eastern Europe corridor. This corridor connects India with Europe passing through Middle East. This is a very important corridor. IMEC corridor is an initiative of the West. Okay. Generally G7 and G20 countries are involved here. The IMEC itself is a part of the larger initiative called PGI. Okay. Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment, PGII. Next example is AAGC, Asia Africa Growth Corridor. This is an initiative of India and Japan. India and Japan have taken an initiative to develop many projects in Africa. So Japan is nothing but West. India, West cooperation. The region of focus is Africa. So here you can mention the region of focus. For IMEC it is Middle East. Here it is Middle East. For Quad it is Indo-Pacific. For AAGC it is Africa. You can also mention about the India-EU trade agreement. India and EU are now discussing to seal the trade agreement. So mention these examples. So these examples showcase the fact that West is coming close with India. Economically, it wants to reduce its dependence or even eliminate its dependence on China when it comes to the supply chain. Okay. And you can briefly mention about India's strengths. India's strengths lies in IT, pharmaceuticals, automobile, green energy. So briefly mention some important sectors in economy. And India's strength lies in the Indian Ocean region. So finish the body of the answer elucidating these points. Then give the conclusion at the end. You need not write conclusion as such. Whatever you write at the end implies it is a conclusion. Naturally, conclusion should be an inference. You should not repeat what is already written in the body of the answer. You can write it as a way forward, solution, and so on. Okay. So the relationship between India and West ensures global balance of power? Is it not? Because China disrupts global balance of power. India-West relationship secures the global balance of power. It also checks unilateralism and the neo-imperialism. Ensure to write these conceptual key terms in the answer. Unilateralism means one country trying to dominate, disrupting balance of power is called unilateralism. Neo-imperialism is indirect imperialism. Today, neo-imperialism is achieved through economic dominance. China does this through projects such as BRI. And through these, India can secure its own interest, especially in energy security, alternate technology, and so on, right? So this is how you write an answer. It should be holistic. It should be written end to end, covering most of the important dimensions. Even though this question is about economic dimension, ensure to touch the other relevant dimension. You can draw simple maps for IR, but don't complicate them. If they are required, you can draw them. This is a simple map for Indo-Pacific region. You can draw for this answer. India, China, West Asia, Africa. So this is a map of Indo-Pacific. Indo-Pacific. Okay. So draw a simple map. We'll now solve the second question. Critically analyze India's evolving diplomatic, economic, and strategic relations with the CARs, Central Asian Republics, highlighting their increasing significance in regional and global geopolitics. Once again, follow the steps advised. Identify the core of the question. The core of the question here is the region Central Asia and the 5 Central Asian republics. So my answer, all the points that I am going to write should revolve around the region Central Asia. Now India is also related in this question. India's relationship with CAR. Now we have to address different dimensions: diplomatic, economic, and strategic. They are given in the question itself. And by this we have to highlight the significance in regional and global geopolitics. So I have to build a framework. India, Central Asia relation. I have to discuss across different dimensions to showcase the significance in regional and global politics. Okay. Right. Now let me structure the answer. Do structuring as you already did. So give the introduction. Introduction is the topic core. It is India CAR relations. CAR refers to Central Asian republics. There are 5 Central Asian republics ending with Stan: Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and so on. 5 stans. Once upon a time they were part of the Soviet Union. Today there are independent countries located in the region Central Asia. Next, body of the answer. Diplomatic, economic, and strategic relations, its significance. This is a 10 marker, 150 words. You have to write roughly for 150 words, 1.5 page. So plan the content accordingly. So heading, introduction, subheading, body of the answer, then conclusion at the end. Excuse me. Let me write the introduction first. How to write the introduction? You have to give the important points briefly in the form of a essence. Okay. How do I look at CAR? The Central Asian republics are located at the crossroads of civilization. The Central Asian region is a crossroad of civilization. Okay. It is like a center point where you can move to other regions, where you will find other civilization. Near Central Asia, you will find China. you find South Asia, you can move across to West Asia, and you can move across to Eastern Europe. So it is crossroad of civilization. So mention CAR. Then briefly highlight the location of CAR. CARs are located geostrategically. Okay, the location of the region, Central Asia itself, provides some advantages to this region which can be used for long-term benefits. This concept is called geostrategic. So mention it briefly. I am writing in the form of points. You can write in the form of paragraph. Okay. So I am discussing in the form of an answer key. Next, India had a earlier legacy with the CARs. Okay. So this relationship can be seen through the earlier Soviet legacy. Soviet legacy, relationship with India. Then mention the concept buffer region. The CAR region is a buffer region. Buffer region is a region or a state that is located between two other geopolitical regions. The buffer region is influenced by the politics of the two other regions or states. This concept is called buffer region or buffer state. For example, Nepal is a buffer state. It is located between India on one hand and China on the other. Ukraine is a buffer state between Russia on one hand and Western Europe on the other. Okay, the buffer could be a region or a state. On both sides, there can be a state, there could be a region. Okay, West Asian region itself is a buffer. Central Asia is a buffer. Okay, right. So mention that it is a buffer region. Generally, buffer regions are crucial for maintaining balance of power. Balance of power. Okay. So Central Asia is one such region. You can draw a simple map of Central Asia. India, China. Just to plot Pakistan. And this is Central Asia. Okay. And mention that India and Central Asia have cultural and historical linkages. Cultural and historical linkages seen through Buddhism, Islam, okay, and the ancient Silk Road. In the ancient period, Silk Road connected Central Asia and India. Silk Road connected India, Central Asia, China with Africa and Europe. So you can trace the historical linkage way back to the ancient period through all these: Buddhism, Islam, ancient Silk Road. See, the introduction itself is holistic. I am not explaining anything in depth, but I am mentioning the important points briefly. Now come to the body of the answer. Body of the answer is diplomatic, economic and strategic relations, its significance. Now I can write one by one. Okay, I can write in the form of numbering. Here I can write from different dimensions. First is economic cooperation. Economic cooperation between India and CAR seen through energy diplomacy. Ensure to mention this conceptual key term. Energy diplomacy is the economic relations between states seen through trading of energy resources. The important ones are oil, gas, coal and uranium. So mention this point. Okay. The CARs are rich in oil, gas, uranium. Next, trade. Trade is relatively poor between India and CARs. It is roughly $4 billion. We have to increase this in the future. Next, a very important infrastructure project connecting India and Central Asia is the Tapi pipeline. Mention it under economic cooperation. Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline. Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India. Next, mention about cooperation in human capital. and mention about the cooperation under the project ITEC. ITEC is an older project of India. Under ITEC, India engages in economic cooperation, helps other countries by provision of technology. This is ITEC. So under one dimension, try to bring the important core points as well as the recent developments. See. Next, second dimension is connectivity and trade. Connectivity and trade comes under economic dimension, but I am giving it under a separate subheading. Under connectivity and trade, the important regions and important places are INSTC, International North-South Transport Corridor, and the Chabahar Port. We actually get transit to Central Asia through the Chabahar Port in Iran. So this is regarding connectivity. Next dimension, diplomatic. India and CARs engage diplomatically through soft power. Okay, soft power is nothing but friendly relations between states. Under soft power, a country influences the preferences, thought process, and the image of itself before other countries. This is called soft power. Language, religion, cultural aspects, domestic values, education, technology, sports, tourism, anything can be used as soft power. When it comes to India and CAR, Buddhism is an important tool for soft power. So mention it under soft power. Diaspora is also an area of diplomatic cooperation. Apart from diaspora, sports is an important area of cooperation. Apart from this, trade talks and climate change. This is another area under diplomatic dimension. Okay, so mention the important point. It is impossible to write all these points as a candidate writing the exam, but try to write the important ones as much as possible. More the relevance, better the content, more will be the scores. So mains is a relative performance only. All the series candidates will write more or less the same points. So you have to write some more points, and all the points should be more relevant. Maintain the flow. Okay, do this to get a higher score. Next dimension is security. The most important challenge for India and CAR with respect to security is Afghanistan. Afghanistan borders India and CAR. Currently, Afghanistan is affected by political instability. It is ruled by Taliban. It faces challenge in the form of terrorism and extremism. So mention these points. Afghanistan situation a challenge. Terrorism and extremism a challenge. Mention the important groups which poses a threat. ISIS, Al-Qaeda, these are some important groups. Then mention about the challenge of terrorism in Central Asia itself. Central Asia itself faces challenge from terrorism and extremism. One important group is IMU. It is similar to Taliban. Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan, IMU. So this is a religious fundamentalist organization. Mention that religious fundamentalism is a threat to CAR. So CARs and India are cooperating with respect to security. Next, mention about India's air base in Tajikistan. India has air base in Tajikistan. You can mention under security. Next dimension is checking and balancing China. Since China is a hegemonistic power which tries to contain India's growth, we are forced to check China in turn, is it not? Now, how to successfully check China, contain Chinese hegemony? We can use the friendship with CARs, to check China and balance China. Okay. See, I am writing across different dimensions. Even though question is about 6 dimension, I am touching the 6 dimension. I am also just bringing in some other dimensions which are related to the 3 important dimensions. Last dimension is strategic. This is asked in the question itself. Strategic. Under strategic, mention the support given by CARs to India for the permanent membership at UNSC. UNSC permanent membership. The CARs support India. For your information, the 5 CARs are secular Muslim countries. They are not Islamic countries. So they are more or less similar to India. But there is a divergence. The CARs are not proper democracies. So this is one challenge and irritant. But they have many similarities with India. They are multi-ethnic. Islam is a common cultural aspect. They are secular like India. Okay. Then we can cooperate with CARs under the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO in short, is a major cooperation platform in Asia. It is very powerful. Important states are present in SCO. The Central Asian states are also present in SCO. We can work with CARs under SCO. Okay. So body of the answer is over. We have addressed the important dimension. Then give the conclusion. You can conclude telling that CAR and the Central Asian region is an extended neighborhood for India. You have to definitely write this point, conceptual point, concept. Extended neighborhood. Extended neighborhood is a region or a state which does not directly share border with India, but it maintains a good relations with India. This is called extended neighborhood. So CAR is extended neighborhood. West Asia and Southeast Asia are also extended neighborhood. CAR is a very important extended neighborhood. So mention it and tell that the CARs can act as strategic partners. Strategic partners with India in the future. Strategic means long-term partner. And India can provide leadership to the CAR. Okay. Leadership does not mean dominance. India is a democratic country. Here leadership refers to guidance. Okay. With this Central Asia question is over. We will now solve the next question. Question number 19. Terrorism has become a significant threat to global peace and security. Evaluate the effectiveness of the UNSC's Counter-Terrorism Committee and its associated bodies in addressing and mitigating this threat at the international level. This is a 15 marker, 250 words question. So we have to give more content. You should roughly write for 2.5 pages, but the steps are the same. You have to decipher the question first, break down the question. The core of the question is the concept of terrorism and the international body or organization called UNSC and the specific body Counter Terrorism Center. So my answer should revolve around concept terrorism and the body called UNSC CTC. Okay. Let me structure the answer. Right. I can structure like this. First, I have to mention about terrorism and the challenge. Secondly, I have to write about UNSC CTC. What is the role? If you look into the syllabus, UPSC is giving the organizations and it is asking us to study the structure and mandate. So the organization is UNSC CTC. I have to mainly focus on the structure and mandate. The question itself is related to structure and mandate. Right? So first terrorism, then UNSC, CTC, then I have to evaluate the effectiveness. So third subheading is effectiveness of UNSC CTC. Now I have to fill the content. Okay, shall we fill? Let's fill. First, terrorism. Briefly write what is terrorism and mention the challenges from terrorism. Terrorism is the illegitimate use of physical force or violence, to achieve political ends. This is called terrorism. Okay, illegitimate use of physical force or violence to achieve political ends. Generally, the groups taking up terrorism are non-state actors. Sometimes the state itself is involved in terror. This is called state terrorism. Another concept is state-sponsored terrorism. But normally the non-state actors are involved in terror. Okay. Some important non-state actors who are terror groups are Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Lord's Resistance Army. Okay. Now you briefly write the challenge from terrorism. Terrorism poses a threat to global peace, poses a threat to global stability, it poses a threat to human rights, it poses a threat to justice, it poses a threat to development. Ensure that your answer is having all these key terms. Okay, these are the threats from terrorism. Am I correct? Next, UNSC CTC. And you can add that terrorism is a common threat for entire mankind. Right now, CTC. Briefly mention about UNSC. UNSC is the body under UN responsible for maintaining international peace and security. It is a very powerful organ of UN. Mention briefly. Then write specifically about UNSC CTC. UNSC CTC is a body within UNSC. It is a CTC is a subsidiary body of UNSC. Its mandate is to address terrorism. Okay. UNSC CTC, its mandate or authority. Mandate includes objectives, responsibility and authority. So it has to tackle terrorism. UNSC CTC was established after the 9/11 attacks on US, which happened in 2001. You can briefly mention. The membership of UNSC is 15. Mention it. Then write about the duties of the UNSC CTC. Okay. You would have studied this under current affairs. Recently, the CTC featured in the current affairs on a regular basis. The UNSC CTC has a task of monitoring the implementation of a UN resolution. Number 1373. This resolution was a landmark in the modern period. UNSC passed this resolution after the 2001 attack, 9/11 attack in US. Then all the countries of the world proactively woke up to the challenge from terrorism. So the UN resolution 1373 is a turning point. After this resolution, a global attempt for tackling terror was started. Okay. So a global attempt for tackling terror was started. Now UNSC CTC was established as a body. The important duties of the UNSC CTC are curbing terror financing and domestically the countries have to criminalize terror financing. Okay. Secondly, they have to freeze funds which are used for terror. You mentioned the important points. Okay. Then the CTC focuses on the financial support for terror groups. Many terror groups obtain financial support from other groups. Sometimes they receive from state actors also. In the past, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Iran, US, China and even UK, they supported some non-state actors who involved in terror. Even Al-Qaeda was supported by the Western Bloc countries headed by US. Okay. So we have to curb the financing to terror. Then the CTC has to share information regarding terror groups and it has to cooperate with member states. These are the duties of CTC. Okay. Even if you have not studied all these facts, try to write the important ones. Okay. One important associated body within CTC is called CTED, Counter Terrorism Committee, Executive Directorate. You can just mention as CTED. Next subheading, I have to write the effectiveness. Even if you have not studied the achievements of CTC, you can still write a good answer if you know the steps taken by international organizations regarding terrorism as a whole. One important action taken at the international level against terrorism is sanctions. Sanctions have been applied on groups such as ISIS, Al-Qaeda, among others in the past. So mention about sanctions. The UNSC has applied sanctions and it regularly updates the sanctions list. Sanctions list. Mention it. You are writing this under the effectiveness. Next point. CTC cooperates with another body called FATF, Financial Action Task Force. Mention FATF. In the past, countries such as Pakistan were focused by FATF. Okay, so mention FATF. Pakistan earlier came under the scanner. Thirdly, the CTC checks the nexus between terror and crime. Many terror groups, they derive their income from criminal activities like smuggling, organ trade, counterfeit currency peddling, flesh trade and so on. So this has to be checked. Recently, many groups are involving in cryptocurrency trade and they use this money for terrorism. So mention cryptocurrency as an example. Then the CTC also focuses on new age threats from terror groups. Example, they use drones, they use the cyberspace. Mention these as examples. Okay. So give at least 2 to 3 very important points to showcase the effectiveness, how CTC has handled terrorism. Then you can mention about India's role also. Indian government works with the CTC through bodies such as NIA, National Investigation Agency, NatGrid and so on. Right. So mention these points. Another important body associated with CTC is the UNOCT. If you can recollect, you can write UNOCT also. UNOCT is the UN Office of Counter-Terrorism. Okay. So I have written the effectiveness. I can also mention the role of US in counter-terrorism. US is a proactive player. US cooperates with UNSC CTC. Okay. India is another player. The US and India have a common challenge in the form of terror. We are contributing to the world when it comes to anti-terror cooperation. Okay, so I have addressed the important points, and I can write the challenges also briefly. Even though question is not about challenges, I can briefly write about the challenges faced in tackling terrorism. Right? So your answer should be logical. What are the challenges? Nexus between state actors and terror group. This is a challenge. An important example is Pakistan, a state actor who supports terror groups like Al-Qaeda and so on. So this is a challenge. Secondly, the anti-terror organization, they suffer from inadequate funding. So mention it briefly. Nexus, inadequate funding. Thirdly, lack of cooperation from state. Many states don't cooperate with anti-terrorism agencies like CTC. So mention them. And end the answer concluding that if we eliminate terror, we can ensure a peaceful world, a prosperous world. One of the solutions to eliminating terror is establishment of democracies in many parts of the world affected by terror, involving the civil society, ensuring the rule of law. Mention these points and end the answer. Democracy, civil society, rule of law. You take Afghanistan, these are lacking in Afghanistan. Democracy, civil society, rule of law. The country is ruled by a terror group called Taliban. So mention these in the solution. And you can also mention the role of other groups which can work with UN to eliminate terror, to combat terror. NATO, SCO, Warsaw Pact. These regional groups can also cooperate with UNSC. Mention this also under the conclusion. We will now solve the last question. Question number 20. 250 words question, 15 marks. Discuss the geopolitical and geostrategic importance of Maldives for India with a focus on global trade and energy flows. Further, also discuss how this relationship affects India's maritime security and regional stability amidst international competition. Decode the question first. The core of the question is India's relationship with Maldives. So we have to discuss the geopolitical and geostrategic importance of India-Maldives relationship with focus on global trade and energy flow. Okay, I have to write around India-Maldives relationship focusing on trade and energy flow. Secondly, I have to discuss how this relationship affects India's maritime security and regional stability amidst international competition. In the second part of the question, we have to mainly focus on the competition coming from China in the Indian Ocean region. So this is what UPSC is expecting from us. India-Maldives relationship and the irritant in the relationship in the form of competition. Okay, let's discuss the answer. Let us structure the answer. The introduction is India-Maldives relationship. This is the introduction. Then significance in global trade and energy flow. Then next subheading is maritime security and regional stability. Now I have structured the answer. Now let me write the content. introduction is India Maldives relationship. In the introduction, I have to mention the important points briefly that showcase the essence of India-Maldives relationship. Okay, so I have to write about Maldives. Basically, Maldives is a state in South Asia, island state. It is an important part of the neighborhood. You have to tell the examiner that you have interpreted the question correctly. So how do I look at Maldives? Part of South Asia, geopolitical region. Maldives is an island, it is a part of the neighborhood. Secondly, Maldives is a buffer state. I already explained the concept of buffer state. Maldives is a very important buffer state. It is also a swing state. Swing state. Mention this concept. Buffer state is very important concept. Swing state is a state that often shifts its foreign policy based on its current needs. This is called a swing state. Earlier, Maldives was close with India because the earlier ruling party, Democratic Party, had a good friendship with India. But today, the ruling party, Progressive Party, does not like India. It has gone closer with China. This is an example of buffer state and a swing state. It is a buffer state because Maldives itself is influenced by the politics of India and China, two major states. It is influenced by other states also, but the two major ones are India and China. Secondly, it is a swing states. Mention these points. Next, mention that Maldives is geostrategically located in the Indian Ocean. Geostrategically. I already discussed concept of geostrategic. Mentioned geostrategically. This region is called IOR, Indian Ocean region. IOR. And also mentioned that it is geopolitically significant. Okay. Now I have given an introduction mentioning the important points briefly. I can also add some more points. India and Maldives are characterized by a cultural and heritage link. In the past, the Indian Ocean connected both the countries. Both countries have a common interest in navigation. So mention these points. Okay. And also mention the concept soft power. Okay. Now I am defining India-Maldives relationship in the neighborhood. Next, body of the answer. Global trade and energy flow. The most important point is the location of Maldives, which plays a crucial role when it comes to global maritime trade. If you look at the Indian Ocean region, the location of Maldives is close to the major sea lanes. Ships carry oil and other goods. The major sea lanes are closer to Maldives. So mention this geostrategic importance. It sits along major sea lanes in the IOR, and as a result, it is crucial for global maritime trade. Maritime trade is trade carried through the oceans. Next point, mention the concept maritime domain awareness. Maritime domain awareness. In simple words, maritime domain awareness means studying about the oceans, opportunities, challenges, and so on. So here Maldives is a very important player because it is strategically located in the Indian Ocean region. Thirdly, Maldives is a key to energy supply from the Middle East. You have to write this point. It is a very important point from Middle East. Middle East includes West Asia as well as parts of North Africa. India receives oil and gas from Middle East. The ships pass through the sea lanes which are located close to Maldives. Once again, Maldives is a very important player in the Indian Ocean region. So, stability of Maldives is important for India. Mention this. Middle East, energy supply, stability. Okay. Next. Mention that India and Maldives are already partners under the Sagar initiative. Sagar initiative is a foreign policy initiative of India where it takes leadership in the Indian Ocean region. Mention Sagar. Another important project is ITEC, Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation. Maldives also plays a role here. Another important project and a very important project is AAGC, Africa Asia Growth Corridor. In all these projects, Maldives is also a stakeholder. Okay. Here India is helping Maldives. Maldives benefits from India. Mention this. Now what are we writing? We are writing important points regarding global trade and energy flow. Right. Next. There are some challenges regarding global trade and energy flow. For example, piracy and terrorism. Here we are already engaging in counter piracy operations. India has already installed coastal surveillance radars in Maldives. So write these developments which are related to energy flow and trade. And mention the important projects which India is planning to implement in the Indian Ocean region. The two important projects are Project Mausam. Project Mausam, Project Spice Route. Currently, these projects are in limbo. Earlier, the government of India planned these projects. These projects are nothing but projects to tap trade opportunities by using the Indian Ocean region as a large realm of cooperation. So you can mention Mausam and Spice Route. Then third part of the question, I have to discuss how this relationship affects India's maritime security and relationship amidst international competition. Here I have to mainly focus on China. Always ensure to give subheadings. You have to structure your answer properly. You have to maintain a proper flow. You have to start with the basic point, then move over to the advanced point. Don't start the answer with the advanced point. Okay. The most important competition comes from China. Okay. When India and Maldives go closer with each other, now China becomes a competitor. Okay. So mention about Chinese competition. China's sphere of influence on Maldives. Spheres of influence is an important IR concept, also a concept in history, world history. One country having its influence on another country is called spheres of influence. Earlier spheres of influence was implemented through imperialism, direct control. Today it is implemented through indirect control. Okay, so mention spheres of influence, China and Maldives, and give the recent example. The government of Maldives, the current government of Maldives recently tilted towards China by moving away from India. Please mention this. Okay. So in the relationship, what are the irritants? You have to write. Next point. Mention about the Chinese strategy in the Indian Ocean region, which also focuses on Maldives. The strategy is the string of pearls. string of pearls theory, mention it. Under the string of pearls theory, China has its influence in the Indo-Pacific region. It builds many ports in the Indo-Pacific region in countries such as Pakistan, Bangladesh, Myanmar and so on, and through these ports, it is able to extend its control. So this imaginary string of pearls is a Chinese influence in the Indo-Pacific region. Mention it. Mention the region. Indo-Pacific. Mention that China is recently increasing its maritime domain awareness in the Indo-Pacific. Apart from this, China is using its Belt and Road Initiative project on Maldives. We already came across a BRI. Mention BRI here again. China tries to influence Maldives through BRI. So these are the irritants which we see as competition. Mention about the role of Pakistan also. Currently, Pakistan is trying to come close to Maldives. Mention it. Now, Pakistan is already a supporter of terror. Maldives itself has suffered from extremism and terrorism in the past. Now, Pakistan's relationship with the Maldives, this can affect the stability in the region. Mention it. It can affect the stability. So mention Pakistan and conclude the answer. You can conclude the answer telling that Maldives can work with India as a strategic partner. These are standard points that you can write in the conclusion. But we have to overcome the political challenges. We can achieve this through increased trade, soft power and energy diplomacy. End the answer like this. You can also end telling that we can strengthen India-Maldives cooperation under platforms such as SAARC. Okay. Thank you, friends. We have finished discussing the answer key. I hope the discussion was useful. Thank you.